Indiana Jones. What more is there to say?
I mean, between running for his life from a giant boulder barreling towards him, creating an iconic shootout scene simply because the actor was too sick to actually do the choreography, and watching over kids getting their hearts ripped out in this PG fun for the whole family adventure.
Dude, put that thing away! They're like children here!
There is no doubt that this iconic character changed cinema and paved the way for adventure movies.
But today we're not talking about that.
No. Today, we're talking about something arguably even more iconic, even more revolutionary, and something far too powerful for mankind. Back before Disney owned, well, literally everything.
In fact, I actually just received word that they now own part of Texas.
But before all of that, there was a movie. No, an experience. No, a cultural phenomenon starring the Nicolas Cage. Some called it Indiana Jones ripoff, others call it garbage, and there's also a lot of people who don't even remember it existed.
But I call it cinema, the height of cinema. None other than National Treasure.
National Treasure is a 2004 historical reality TV masterpiece directed by John Turtle TMNT, this guy. The movie had a pretty solid box office, and the ratings, well, you know how critics are. This was a very awkward time for Disney. The age of superhero films hadn't really begun yet, and Pirates of the Caribbean had just become a hit, leading them to try and recapture that magic and sprout other franchises. Using the same producer from those swashbuckling films, they tried going down the adventure route to try and create their own iconic character like Indiana Jones, until they just straight up bought Indiana Jones. But with both that purchase just 8 years later and the switch to superhero blockbusters, this left us with a duology of films that no one really knows what to do with them.
Well, it's time someone takes a stand and acknowledges these cinematic masterpieces and complete snubbed Oscar nomination for the Nicolas Cage.
Oh, my personal favorite. Have their entrails cut out and burned.
This is National Treasure.
So we start the movie off and...
It was 1832.
Wait, what? Okay, so, we're not even 2 minutes into this movie, and we immediately get a huge exposition dump out of nowhere that literally goes on for like 3.5 minutes.
I'm telling you, it's great.
And it's nice to know that Grandpa is all of a sudden challenging Nicolas Cage to the Who Wants to Be Here Less award.
You want to be?
So the exposition dump was about a hidden treasure. The kid then transforms into Nicolas Cage, and we see them on Hoth searching for a clue with a fortune. We get a one-sentence explanation of our comic relief sidekick, who says the first just hilarious gem of the whole movie.
Don't go by me. I broke a shoelace this morning.
Get it?
So after even more exposition, this time between Nicolas Cage and Sean Bean, they dig up this ship, which definitely should have taken way longer to do, but we'll play on. They find this one artifact thingy, until realizing that the map to the treasure is invisible and on the back of the Declaration of Independence. Sure, why not? And right after that, wait, what?
Okay, so, heh.
Literally all we've been given is just a few sentences of dialogue about how they've played poker together, and somehow we're supposed to care that Sean Bean is now turning on Nick Cage?
This movie is 2 hours and 11 minutes long. Why is everything so rushed?
So, Sean Bean wants to steal the Declaration of Independence, and Nick Cage doesn't. Okay, that has potential to be a pretty clever way of testing his morality and conscience. Because imagine if Sean Bean actually stayed with them, and the two of them had, I don't know, maybe more than 2 sentences of backstory. You could actually get some subtle manipulation by Sean Bean, and an intense scene where emotions are heightened, leaving Nick Cage to have to choose between the treasure and his own morals.
But who needs that? Just throw in some forced conflict so the comic relief sidekick can get more gems like these.
Do you know what the preservation room is for?
Delicious jams and jellies?
Get it?
Comedy Gold!
So they go to Washington, D.C. They meet with, this girl, and warn her about how Sean Bean is going to steal the Declaration of Independence. Obviously, she thinks they're crazy, until Nick Cage gives off the only somewhat well thought out line in the movie while reading off the Declaration of Independence.
People don't talk that way anymore.
And then, somehow they tie that into a discount Spider-Man quote.
It means if there's something wrong, those who have the ability to take action have the responsibility to take action.
With great power comes great responsibility.
But either way, this leads us to the most memeable line in the whole thing.
I'm gonna steal the Declaration of Independence.
They set up some Ocean's 11 heist, and man, I'm a sucker for a good heist movie. There's just something so satisfying about seeing a stupid yet genius plan come together. And for all those critiques I made earlier, this is where you kind of just get to sit back and enjoy the ride. Meanwhile, Sean Bean has his own agenda, and just goes in guns a-blazing, while Nick Cage gets weirdly into his role.
Oh, my personal favorite. have their entrails cut out and burned.
When do we get the free food?
They keep going through their insanely lucky plan until coming across Sean Bean. And again, this is where a really pivotal moment could have been placed about the clashing of their moralities, but who needs that? And for what it's worth, the score is actually very good and intense. Sometimes it does kind of just feel like discount John Williams, but for the most part, it is very exciting. We get a pretty clever scene where it looks like Nick Cage is trying to steal a replica of the Declaration, even though it's just so weirdly unfunny and lifeless.
We take Visa.
Seriously, if this movie had some actual funny Lord and Miller type dialogue, it would have been way more memorable. But I guess we just get stuck with this.
This car smells weird.
We get an actually pretty intense chase, which, again, the score has no right going this hard. Luckily, literally everyone has Stormtrooper aim because, you know, PG Disney movie. And we get quite possibly the weirdest line in the whole movie, and yes, that is saying far more than you can possibly imagine.
You're all lunatics!
You hungry?
What?
When do we get the free food?
So they pull the old switcheroo, as the police are hot on their trail because, of course, Nick Cage paid with a literal credit card. I'm sorry, there are not enough contrived reasons in the known universe for him to do something that idiotic.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 stupidest people.
They need a safe place to uncover the mystery, so they go to Nick Cage's father's house.
I'm in a little trouble.
Is she pregnant?
I look pregnant?
Sorry, it was just so quiet.
He talks about how he's wasting his life with the treasure, and, you know, I think they really could have done something way more interesting with this character. They just went that extra mile. We could have seen him all washed up and just feeling as if his entire life is ruined. It could have been a nice parallel to Nick Cage of what can happen if you never let something go.
Which begs the question, why does Nick Cage never let go?
I mean, I'm all for the never give up message shoved into every kids movie nowadays, but I'm more talking about just the character in of itself. He never grows. He never shows one slight bit of skepticism and vulnerability. He's a hardcore believer at the beginning and a hardcore believer at the end, which I guess is admirable, but not very relatable. Everyone goes through rough patches in their life where they feel like giving up. And a treasure hunt description for when he was a kid, of all things, would have been the perfect place to really dive deep into that. But no, he keeps his childlike innocent hope through the whole movie. So it really doesn't feel earned when they eventually find the treasure.
But who needs those mature and relatable themes in a kids movie? We gotta get to the comic relief sidekick giving out more one-liners.
Albuquerque. See, I can do it too. Snorkel.
Comedy Gold!
They use lemons in a hairdryer to... who even cares at this point? So they have to go to Philadelphia to decipher what the numbers mean. They figure out it has something to do with the Liberty Bell, and use the shadow of the tower to uncover Ben Franklin's bifocals. Apparently, Nick Cage was Superman this whole time, as he somehow notices these guys. Seriously, what? In fact, the camera isn't even focused on them for most of the time. I'm more interested in what this woman's doing. So instead of staying in there until they leave, they try and casually escape. This leads into another pretty good chase, with again, some really awesome music. The generic bad guys continue to Stormtrooper PG aim through the cemetery, as Nick Cage really does turn into a discount Indiana Jones type character. He gets arrested as Sean Bean calls to meet him in New York City. The FBI try to use Cage as a bait, until we get an honestly pretty clever twist, as it was all set up by Sean Bean, the comic relief guy, and Declaration Lady to free Nick Cage. They have his dad captured, I guess, which like, when did they have time for that? But they use the bifocals again to find that the treasure is below the church they're in. These two, kiss? Which, is still a better Disney love story than these two. But, ooh, they actually branch out with their comic relief this time.
Wait a second, never happened to me.
They go through the Chamber of Secrets or whatever, I don't know, I was more of a Percy Jackson guy myself. But we get some intense claustrophobic action in the chamber. Okay, so this is an interesting setup for a scene. They come to a dead end, until Nick Cage finally snaps and shows skepticism.
No, there are no more clues. That's it, okay? It's over. End of the road. The treasure's gone.
This is it. This is what I wanted to see.
Him questioning everything he's been told and thinking that his whole life is a lie. Now almost terrified to end up like his father.
Fake clue.
Great.
Yeah, so, the only good acting in the movie was an act.
I don't even know if that's irony, that's just weird.
So, of course, there's another clue, which leads them even further into the chamber. The music swells as they finally get to the last giant room, of course filled with the treasure. And, you know what, it is pretty satisfying to finally see them find it. Although, it's a little weird when they actually give a monetary value to it.
Say, $10 billion?
What? Wait, where did you get that number from?
I mean, this is definitely at least in the trillions.
And you're trying to tell me that the company that made Fortnite is worth more than this?
So they arrest Sean Bean after, which it almost feels like blasphemy to have him be in a 2000s film and not killed off. We see the crew all together in the future and find out that they were offered 10% of the treasure and turned it down. Although the comic relief sidekick that I just now realized looks unsettlingly familiar to Ian from Smosh. Seriously, what the what? But anyway, he says that he only got about half of 1%.
Which is still $50 million, so I'm not really sure what he's complaining about.
But we end it on their newly acquired mansion while teasing sequels, which actually somehow happened.
And that was National Treasure. And, you know, for as much as I joked about how stupid it is, I also secretly love it for that exact same reason.
There is no doubt that this movie is just plain ridiculous. But my god, is it not entertaining. I remember really liking it when I was younger, and even though I realize it's a lot stupider now, that almost makes it better. And this movie really is just the epitome of fun, and incredibly satisfying. Not just with them eventually finding the treasure, but with that whole out-of-place Ocean's 11 heist scene, which is one of my favorites from the whole film. All tied together by an honestly underrated and powerful score. The characters are... whatever. Sean Bean isn't really given enough evil stuff to be threatening. The dad is just wasted potential. The doppelganger Smosh comic relief guy is just weirdly unfunny. The declaration lady is there. And Nick Cage has about the same level of interest of being in this movie as a potato. But you know what? I wouldn't want it any other way.
And, you know, I actually think this movie has done something that very few movies have actually done. And it's especially important for a somewhat kids film to discuss.
Which is really just talking about the appreciation of history. Because we saw the movie through the eyes of someone who is so passionate about these things. But even if it is laughably historically inaccurate in some parts, it just kind of puts things into perspective of how little our country has been around, but also how much it has changed. And for a movie to make me think about these types of overlooked things while also greatly entertaining me, well, then I think there's a little more here than what meets the eye.
And also, I've never actually seen the sequel to this movie, but I know it has something to do with, like, kidnapping the president or governor or whatever.
Kidnap the